much for being here, and thank you to the Film Festival for inviting me. This is the first time I'm appearing in public in New York in a really long time. Feels like at least a couple of years have gone by, and I can't imagine a more wonderful reason to come back and to find myself on a stage with people I love and this incredible film, which I have such a vivid memory of seeing for the first time. I went to see it in Boston, where I was living. I went to see it with my mother, my sister, her best friends. I mean, we were a huge group, and we were all just so excited to see this movie that Mira was making, because, of course, I already had fallen in love with her work when I was a college student here. I studied at Barnard College, and I remember my mother and sister coming to visit me once, and we went to see Salam Bombay at the Paris. I think it was playing at the Paris Cinema. I don't even know if that exists anymore, but it does. That's good. And so I have this very vivid memory of going to see that film and being so struck all those years ago at how much Mira, how much you put into this movie. And as I was watching it today, it really felt like a fresco, you know? I mean, there were so many stories that were being told. And that really, I think that really struck me watching it tonight in this context. And that line in the film, from where to where we've come, right? That is so resonant. And it's, in the film, it's said with a sort of sadness, yeah? But I feel that it's one of these things that anybody who has migrated, immigrated, moved, left, negotiated borders has asked oneself, right? I know it's something that's constantly sort of a refrain in my own upbringing, sort of where have we come, where did we come from, and how did we get here? So I want to ask you, the first question is, watching this film travel across all of these years, these 3 decades, where do you see it having come back to? I mean, it's so interesting that you brought your character back to Uganda, you know, to have that sense of reconnection. So how does it feel for you right now to be reconnected with this film, with this beautiful film?
Thank you so much, Jhumpa. Well, it actually feels deeply moving, also because Ed and the beautiful team of Criterion have done such a remarkable job also remastering it, and the sound. It's truly sumptuous and voluptuous, and I really enjoy that. And I don't really enjoy my own work. I torture myself, but I did have, I really feel very moved because it is enjoyable, because there's so much politics in it that is still so timely and actually very brave to hear some things that we were outrageous enough to say then. And I also missed very much my friend Suni, who wrote the screenplay. You know, I mean, the lines, you know, from where to where we've come is a kind of joke but serious line that we always say to each other, especially those of us who have come from anywhere to anywhere, you know. And also there's a lot of lines that are somewhat a translation of our own language, you know. Kahan se kahan aa gaye hain, you know, we it's in many, we always say that, right? So I missed Suni very much because she had a capacity, we share a great sense of humor, and also through humor to bring the point of the matter, you know, whether all these stories you refer to, I mean, it was really a lot in the screenplay, and a lot in the fact that our film came out of actual truths, you know. Actually, we went to Mississippi. You know, many Ugandan exiles had bought motels there. You could hardly find an American motel because it was dirt poor, and you could buy your own motel, and you could hire your own family who did not know English to run the motel, you know. But then we had never seen Uganda, and Suni and I went to Uganda for the first time in the whole African continent in 1989 to research this movie. And I have to say, on an aside, I meant to say this in the introduction, but this movie truly changed my life, because I fell in love in Uganda. It's dedicated, the film is dedicated to M. Jan, who is Mahmood Jan, my husband and love and partner, who's right here tonight. And I've lived in Uganda, you know, for 30 some years now, in that house in which our son Zoran, who's now a New York City politician, was also born there. So, I mean, it's really a film that has totally changed my life. But we also made a beautiful film school next door to our home, Maisha, which is now 16 years old. A lot of us here who have made the film, Lydia and everyone, have been a part of that movement to make local East African film be alive and, you know, strong. Because like Okello says, you know, Africa is for Africans. The stories of Africa have to be told by Africans. So anyway, it has many, many layers of influence in my life and really changed it quite, you know, hugely. But in terms of the timeliness of this film, I mean, when we made it literally 30 years ago, it was the first black and brown like interracial love story, right? But I haven't seen anything like that ever since, even the 30 years. So when Kamala Harris was elected, I said, you know, this is the child of Mississippi Masala, you know, but really, but there is still so little of us that is seen. So I feel like I'm really happy that our children and our generation, the generation behind us, can know this film, can know this terrain, which is otherwise, if we don't tell our own stories, no one will tell them, and they can see it, you know, they can feel it, and I hope also enjoy it. But Sarita, you should speak because you are the heart of the film.
Thank you. It just moved me what you said. If we don't tell our own stories, who will? So for me, this is wild. Like I kept thinking, would I fit into those jeans? Like really superficial thoughts. And then I thought, Mira's a really comedic actress. Like I didn't think that at the time because she had such a small role and I didn't pay attention. But now I was like, wow, she's very funny. It was also weird because now I'm older, I'm relating more to the parents. And my daughter who's in the audience is more my age. So it's a head trip. And I thought, I wish I was nicer to my parents, even as actors. Just crazy thoughts. But obviously I haven't changed much. I think, like Mira, this was so, I think even when we were doing it, we knew it was special. Because it was a time we were growing up ourselves in cinema in her life because she fell in love and had a baby. And for me, it was post-university, coming into the world. Mira brought me to New York. I used to live in London. So this movie is the beginning of our dreams. And so to see it 30 years later, I feel like it's time to share it with other people. Like, I'm so happy my daughter's here because she's beginning to dream. And so it feels right to pass it on, you know? So thank you, Ed and Mira.
A cinematographer is always looking for new landscapes, and that Mira was so generous to allow me to be part of that and discover, you know, a culture and that I wasn't part of by any means, but that I was could be so involved with. So it was a great collaboration to work with Mira and with you, Sarita.
Well, it was so beautiful to watch the shift in landscape and just a beautiful, beautiful. You were so beautiful. Can I just say,
still is.
You were so you are so beautiful. But you were so beautiful to watch. I was just watching, and all of you and that chemistry between you and Denzel was really just
Electric.
It's quite an extraordinary thing to watch, and but I was really struck. I mean, as we get older, we think about things like trees and sky and all. The nature was so powerful and evocative, and I started to recognize all of these obsessions you have with palette and the colors that you use and the hands and the rain and those scenes and the water and so one can trace so many things coming out of this film and really I feel like, I mean, you owe so many things to this film. We all do, and I do think that watching that film allowed me to start exploring a lot of things in my own work. I mean, you sort of opened this door to think about things, to think about questions, to think about intergenerational questions that are happening in both of the families. I mean, there's this sort of revolving set of tensions and dramas that I thought were so, you never stood still in one particular sort of set of characters, And speaking of things moving around, so I have to ask Sarita, watching that car, were you driving the car? And how did you manage to do that?
This is such a Indian thing because Mira and I don't drive, which is evident. But Mira also is that kind of director where she's like, it's okay, yeah? Like,
Jump in
and
the car.
like the producers are like, no, we have to make sure. And she's like, yeah, we don't have time. No. Okay. Put someone in the box. Like there was some guy, right? In the floor?
Yeah.
A short guy, right? And Mira was like, go. It's an independent movie. We don't have the money. Get a double.
No.
No?
I'm sure Michael Nozick and Lydia would not have allowed that. But I always believe that intelligent women don't drive. But I failed my Manhattan driving test 3 times. And then I didn't drive. Chauffeurs are
I
there
feel
for
better.
a reason. But she did drive the car.
But
when
you
she
drove the
did.
car.
I drove.
You drove the car.
Yeah. It was scary, but it was fun.
Scared for me
It was
because
scary
you were
for
coming
Ed.
with the camera
Yeah.
when you go to stop.
Where were you? Yeah, you were right.
Yeah.
That's right. There was a mark for the
Yeah,
stop.
because I operated on that film.
I remember that. I remember.
And you had to drive the shopping cart too, in the beginning. That unforgettable shopping cart scene.
You were good at that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, like the comedic moves or running to the car.
Well, a lot of it was actually, inspired by reality and what we used to see. I mean, when weddings happened in these motels, it was 25 gallons of milk.
Yeah.
It's not something. So much is from life. We actually were also in a car crash, which gave us the idea to
Oh,
start
really?
their meeting in the car crash, because there was this guy, the hustler, who wanted to make money off both sides, and we met this person through that car crash. So there were things like that that were so reminiscent when I saw the film today, because a number of details like that we picked up from actually living in Greenwood, Mississippi for many weeks, many months sometimes.
And what was it like for both of you to go there? I'm assuming you hadn't spent time in that location. What did it feel like, and how did you respond to it?
That club, it was called Mitchell's,
Yes.
and we would go there, and we were probably the first interracial people, whites, to go to that club. And I remember one night I was there with Lydia Pilcher, and we drove back, and we had a police escort, and they stopped us. We said, "Why are you stopping us?" "Oh, we just wanted to see if you were all right." So we felt, and then also that restaurant,
Los
Los
Gos.
there was never, the only African Americans were the waiters. But of course, while we were there, we all ate there, and they were very welcoming to us. But I stayed a week later just to photograph things around Greenwood, and that went right back to the way it was.
Well,
Medgar
yeah.
Evers was killed in that town.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was like
Right.
the crux of the Ku Klux Klan was Money, Mississippi was not very far from there, where, where he was murdered.
Yeah. And I remember Denzel not wanting to stay in a home that we had for him, like a mansion that we had rented. He says, I don't want to stay there. I want to stay right there with the cast and crew in the Ramada Inn when we all stayed. So there was an element of fear or caution. We could not, and we were often tracked in white establishments. We were just not made. We were made to feel unwelcome. And that was very alive and very much the town. So all people of color stuck together in Ramada Inn. And the amazing thing was Sharmila Tagore, who plays your mom, is a major star, huge star from India. And so when the Indians knew that Sharmila was in Ramada Inn, every night we would come back from shooting and there would be a row of tiffins outside Sharmila's room. From all the
Offerings.
community, just fans, just making homemade food for her. And, and she's a darling sort of mother hen. And all of Indians of Pontiac, the whole cast, everyone would just tongues drooling, because I will never touch catfish again because I only ate catfish for like 6 months there. And so Indian food was just, yearned for. And every night, Sharmila would give us tiffin in her room, because we could, So it was a lot like the atmosphere in the film, in terms of the community being in the motel. Also the commonality you spoke of the two sides, of Demetrius's family and her family. It was just like that. They're so common in so many ways of being together, especially in the South, but ne'er the twain shall meet, And all of that inspired, of course, our story.
I loved that moment in the restaurant, going from one set of people to the other. I thought that was so beautiful and representative in some sense of, these separate worlds in the film, right? That we kept getting a glimpse of this family, that family, these minor characters, then the parent's story, the father's story, the past. It was beautiful. Yeah.
And it was inspired, by that longing for Uganda and longing for home. And when I went to Uganda, for the first time, it was the end of the Civil War. The first scene was, when the police stopped them. It's very much out of my own experience of being there and being with, soldiers, roadblocks. It was very dangerous in feeling. But I was looking eventually for a place that was unforgettable. You'd never forget. And Mahmood took me to this incredible home, which the minute I saw it, I thought this was it. That amazing view of Lake Victoria. And later, very soon after, he bought it for us, and we moved in. After we finished shooting and trashing the place, we moved in, and we live there ever since.
I know you sent me pictures.
Yeah, I sent you
recognized
pictures.
it. Yes.
It's still the same, except there's a forest in front of our, in the view. It's many more trees, but otherwise it's still the same, and it cannot change because of the view, because of the vantage point. But so it was extraordinary to see it again, and having just left it a month ago. But Uganda is very much my life.
Can you talk a little bit about how the story, just how you built it? Because, I was just really interested in how things were unfolding in this relatively brief span of time. I mean, there's a lot of time covered, but the Greenwood section is meant to be a few months, maybe, or
It's just a few months.
so it's a very concentrated, but so many things happen.
I mean, the present is just a few months, but the past is, of course, the past, which informs so much of the present. But the story came out, well, originally it was by what I call the hierarchy of color, or feeling it as a brown kid at college. I came from India when I was 19 to Harvard on a scholarship, and being the brown girl between black and white was something communities in our college. Just I felt it. I felt that I was accessible to both communities, but there were invisible lines, and I wanted to. This hierarchy was something that intrigued me. And after Salam Bombay, I had read a lot of non-fiction of the Ugandan Asian exile from Uganda because of Amin and many people coming to the south and many people coming to England and various places. And I started interviewing close to 2,000 Ugandan exiles in England and in here. And then India Abroad, remember that tabloid we had, not tabloid, it's a newspaper, and that they wrote about they used to call them the Patel motels. You know, the fact that you cannot, it's all run by Indian families, and many of them happen to be Ugandan exiles. So very much in the style of social science research. The first trip, in fact, I made to the south was with a dear friend. I think he's here tonight, Amitav Ghosh, wonderful writer, and we first started on that together to explore whether there could be a story here, and went to Mississippi. With Mitch and with a gang of us. And then a couple of months later, I still couldn't corner the story and asked Suni to come in on it. And Suni had her own angle on this black and brown relationship. She'd had her own influence on it. And then we went back to Mississippi and basically lived in Mississippi over 2 months, she and I. And then decided to go to Uganda to see this place that everybody speaks about. You throw two seeds across your shoulder, they would say, and tomorrow there'll be papayas. It was such a fertile place. They dreamt about this place. And finally we went to East Africa, and it opened my mind so much. And that's when I read a book by Mahmoud Mamdani, who I later met and got together with, and he wrote this beautiful book called From Citizen to Refugee about being expelled by Idi Amin, and after generations of living there and then coming to London and so on. So all these influences helped us, but essentially the time in these real places informed the story. And then we made a map together, Suni and I, and then she wrote the screenplay, and we kept editing and refining it in the way that you see it. Yeah. So it came together like that. It took about a year and a half to to conceive it and write it. And then we had a lot of trouble raising money for it, because nobody, it was not that time, and they really gave me a hard time doing it. And Cinecom Pictures, I'm very happy that they finally financed it. In fact, Bart Walker, who was head of Cinecom at the time, financed it and has then left Cinecom and has worked as my agent ever since for some 33 years. And he was very responsible for resurrecting the rights back to us as filmmakers. So it's just one of those amazingly winding roads,
Yes,
and
from where to where.
From where to where we've come.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say, that because to me the center of gravity is so much the Uganda, piece of it. And yet you went there, that was sort of in the second phase of your exploration of the whole sort of texture of the film, but it's so much about, it begins with this incredibly painful separation, right? And I remember that whole segment of the film from the first time I saw it. I remember it very vividly. And then in the end, what you do so brilliantly is, it's a happy ending, right? And yet it's layered with a very intense separation that's necessary, so it's like you're looking at these two modes of separation. One is the separation that has to happen, right, for people to move forward, to grow, and then the other sort of more sort of starkly brutal separation of being cast out, of being exiled, of losing your sense of place. And I think you very much explore both of these modes, right?
And that feeling of that you can long for something, you can yearn for something, the what I later called the uselessness of nostalgia, but it's very, very powerful. And when you come face to face with that reality now, as Jay does when he returns to Kampala, nothing is the same because he has changed, But there is that beautiful melancholy about that realization that love is where Kinu is, or where he is at home, and maybe this is no longer something he can consider his home. So that was something, of course, again, we all feel, those who go from where to where, that when we long to return, things have changed. We have changed. It's because we have changed.
Sarita, can I ask you a little bit about, so I was basically the age of Mina when I watched the film. I think I was literally 24 years old. And I was so struck by her character and how strong she was, and how she stood up for what she wanted and what she needed and stood up to her parents and all of these things. And I just wonder how you sort of grew into this character and how you became her.
I think, first of all, I forget each time because she's pretty strong and rebellious, but like a lot of Indian girls, Mira and Suni wrote a character that's actually behaving half the time. Going to the wedding, dressing appropriately, working, cleaning bathrooms, like doing a lot. So that, in a weird way, their rebellion comes from you want to be her, because she's not just rebellious. She's actually quite a good daughter. And I think that hit me this time, is that I didn't even realize, like, she's a better daughter than most, It's just when she knows she needs it, she speaks up. Like when you're in love, you get that energy to fight. Or when you feel there's justice to be had, when the motel scene, when her cousin bursts in, she suddenly says, she curses. And I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. So I also think Mira, we talked a lot, we hung out a lot. She directed every scene. I was just beginning my career, so she kind of taught me everything. But we also had so much fun, and she'd watch me offset and put things in set, and it was seamless, kind of. And I've had a similar life to Mina. I grew up in Jamaica, moved to Italy, left behind friends and family many times in my life, and you become this weird, strong person, but inside you're so hurting for something all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's what I saw this time.
And I felt that as
good.
I was watching her, and I think that since, my life was a certain way when I was 24, and it's very different now that I'm 54. Yeah. And I feel I have more of those separations inside of me as well. I've crossed more boundaries and places and left behind and come back and all of these things, that you lived at a younger age and as part of your childhood, your formation. So I recognize so much more of that anguish of separation and all of those things that you put into this film. I think hit me even more in this viewing.
I just want to share how I met you, Sarita. I saw what I was looking for in Mina was a lack of vanity, no vanity, and great intelligence. And I saw a picture of Sarita, a wild head of hair, and on a bicycle, and she looked just like unmade up and completely like not caring how she might appear, and she looked like a lioness to me. I loved her look. And I asked Susie Figgis, this brilliant casting director in England who was casting my film, I said, just find me that girl, please. And I remember the day I went to London to cast and meet a lot of people, and I kept asking Susie, when is the girl with the hair coming? And she kept delaying, and she said, no, let's have lunch, and I'll just meet her and so on. And anyway, after lunch, in comes Sarita, and she completely fulfills my image of what she might be like. She was a student of film. She was not a student of film acting. I think you were studying theory, and so on. And what had happened was that she came in, typical Sarita, came in with oily, unwashed, dirty hair, and Susie Figgis took one look at her and said, you will go to the salon, take this money from me, fix your hair to look as big, as wild as possible. and then we'll meet after lunch, and I'll make all the excuses I can for you. And that's what happened. She came in with the hair, and
I was so scared because I knew I had to be seeing you at like 1, and she was sending me to a salon, and I was like, what's Mira going to say? And she's like, well, you have to come up with something, and I will too. And I was like, I'm so nervous. I'd seen all of Mira's documentaries and Salon Bombay, so I was very nervous. So when I walked in with this hair and Susie was punching it up even more, I was like, I'm going to lose this job. Like, this looks vain.
and then I cast, I managed to get Denzel to say yes, and that was great because he also loved Salam Bombay, and that was one of the big reasons. But then I showed him pictures of you in a magazine that you were modeling for, and he just thought it was wonderful, but didn't say much, and was completely on the trip, and it was quite unusual at the time to have kind of a star. He later won the Oscar. He was not so well known at the time, but he was our star for sure. To work opposite essentially a non-actor or untrained actor opposite him, and it was just a beautiful alchemy that happened right from the beginning, because we spent a lot of time hanging out and doing readings and making both of you as comfortable as possible. And it was a
Yeah, and he leaned into it because I remember a lot of the scenes, he'd pick up something you gave him and throw it at me. And I was like, oh my God, is this improv? And I'd look at him, but the way he leaned, there was a caring, for someone who's on the verge of stardom, he was. Yeah.
And he said to me very clearly, he said, I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to, be with an Asian girl. I've never got this before. Like, this kind of love story would not exist,
Wow.
And, so it was interesting, working with him, at that time.
I really admired the hair. I did. I mean, I didn't know the hair story, but there were a lot of beautiful shots of hair.
I fixed every single thing myself.
Yes. Okay, now
Especially
I understand.
the supermarket scene.
A lot of hair. And I also really admired the way the shawl was just draped in this really perfect way when she comes to Biloxi, when she gets off the bus. I was like, that would never happen to me. That my scarf would be like so crushed and bad.
Yeah.
And I was just really loving that moment.
Well, I remember, she appeared in this white blouse, sleeveless, and it was nice and everything, but it didn't have the masala, to be honest, of what I was trying to do. And Kinnari Ilakhia, our wonderful costume designer, we essentially wore our clothes.
Yeah.
You wore a lot of my clothes all the time, in fact, and also Kinu's clothes. So it was always about having something picante, having something that is spicy, like we are, and like masala is. So in terms of clothing too. So that was a big thing.
Ed was always there. Amazing.
This was shot on film.
Yeah.
It was beautifully shot on film. Yeah.
And we did something that was interesting. I wanted the comparison of Africa to Mississippi. So we shot Fuji in Africa, which lends itself to the greens, the yellows, the greens, and the warm colors. And we shot Kodak in Mississippi. And then I shot with different lenses. I shot with older Cook lenses in Africa and Zeiss high speed, which are much sharper lenses in Mississippi.
Yeah. You really feel it. You really feel it now, especially after the remaster.
Yeah, well, I could do things with Mira in the DI that I could never do before.
At that time, yeah.
So we were so lucky to find the original negative to work with.
So what should we do? Should we ask the audience if they have some questions?
I think they might, yeah.
So how will it work? Do people just get up and ask a question?
Devika will tell us.
Okay.
Oh.
Or they come up
Oh, there's a microphone here.
Oh, yeah, there's a microphone up here, yeah. It's a tough question because it's, I think they might have had a very, they might have had a very fun ride and then a turbulent one. And then they might have split up and then had said to each other from where to where we came. And then they might have come back together because I actually think that they were meant to be together. I just felt that very much this time, that they were rebels in their own hearts and their hearts united them. But that's my romantic view, perhaps. But the turbulence, I definitely would think, definitely would have existed.
It's a beautiful answer. Yeah.
Please come on up, yeah. Please
Hi.
ask your question. Oh, yeah. It's too deep.
So I'm just going to say on behalf, and maybe not behalf, of every South Asian filmmaker here, we want to say Mississippi Masala was chatpata.
Chatpata.
Yes, thank you. So with, and Mira, all of your movies have had a very specific political lens towards how can art and cinema change the world. So we saw that with the underlying racism, with being Indian in Uganda, being Indian in America, as well as being African American in the US. With the current climate, if you and Suni were jamming together today, and you were like, how would we make Mississippi Masala in 2022? What would that world look like for an interracial couple that could see love, could feel love, but also feel the strain of love, feel the strain of family, feel the strain of culture over the course of time that has kind of changed but not changed?
You have to work
Thank
now.
you very much. Thank you very much for your passion for it. But as a filmmaker, I think you may be, we can't spin stories just sitting right here. And I'm certainly not going to spin a story that, to the audience before I know it fully baked. So I really can't tell you the story we would cook now. But I am making a pretty interesting kind of, I think of it as a child of masala. It's not given a name yet, but it's a film I'm going to be making with Pharrell Williams doing the music, and it features a black African American character from here and an Indian woman from Bombay, and we are making a sort of musical version, which will certainly do the same things that we did 30 years ago in terms of looking at what has happened to today's world, in terms of this coming together. I'm keeping it kind of vague because I have to, but that is how I am. That is one thing that I think of Mississippi Masala when I'm conceiving it. Yeah, thank you.
Actually, thank you, Jhumpa and Mira and Sarita for being you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry, Ed, you're left out of that
And
one.
Ed.
Hi, thank you all for making this beautiful film. I'm a little starstruck, so I'm looking at my notes. This movie is like a really beautiful romance, a romance between man and country, familial romance, and between Mina and Demetrius. I guess I was wondering, because you said this film changed the course of your life and you fell in love in Uganda, did that experience change, or did it affect how you wrote or depicted Mira and Denzel on screen?
You mean Mina?
Oh,
and
yeah,
Denzel.
I'm sorry, Mina and Denzel.
No, it's happened. It's happened to us several times. Yes, it did. When I started working with Denzel, we started with all those industrious good boy scenes, and he was amazing in all of those scenes with Dexter and his father and so on. Just effortless, like consummate. It was like seeing really a star at play, because he completely was in his being and utterly comfortable and doing all kinds of lifelike things that enhanced everything and made others also feel very comfortable. But when it came to the love stuff, I just wasn't feeling it, and I was directing this film in a sort of love stupor. I was in that state, and I said so, not, and I remember very much when I was, he had his trailer parked outside the cotton fields, and I just wasn't feeling that weak-kneed sensation, which thankfully I've had the privilege of feeling once, in my life, and I was marching outside the trailer saying, how am I going to get this out of Denzel, who's so incredible in everything he was doing. But this, he was holding back. We hadn't done the love scenes. We kept the love scenes till the very end, the last day of shooting. But so I just was psyching myself up. And meanwhile, I think he had won the Oscar in the middle of that for Glory. So he was also a star. And I had, nothing. And I marched in and I sat with him, and I was quite nervous, but I tried not to be. And I said, look, Denzel, you're doing this great, you're doing that great, it's extraordinary, but... And he said, yeah, what is it? And I said, it's this stupor of love thing, this thing that I am sensing in myself and I'm not sensing in when you're with her, And I think it's about vulnerability. I think it's about, like, really dropping the guard, when you're with each other. And he looked at me sort of skeptical, like I'm just, speaking out of my own heart or something. And I said, I think the women in the audience will really dig that, and they'll swoon. And it'll be interactive, Denzel. This is the way that if you can achieve that vulnerability, then we'll have something. And I think the minute I spoke marketing, it seemed to really hit him, He said, all right, I'll take care of it. Okay. And then we got into pretty much the next stage of this romantic love, which was so extraordinary. I mean, you see it, I feel it, it's palpable. And we achieved, it was a kind of threesome. We were always together trying to achieve that. And it was very, very, actually very open by the end of it, the night, the Biloxi night. I remember, Ed, you remember we had these two rooms that were interconnected like motel rooms are. You were lighting their motel room and I was in the other the room with the two of them, and we had this, and Denzel had ordered what was it called? The thing that they eat there, like crawfish, but it's sort of a jumbo. I don't know what gumbo.
It's gumbo.
Crawfish
Yeah.
gumbo, and and I had ordered some champagne, and I was trying to keep the mood right and everything. But inside, it's a total performance. I was thinking, God, Ed, finish lighting so I can keep this mood and bring it over there to the next room, and and all of this. We kept a very, very calm and cool set. I mean, but a fun set.
You got champagne and then you got in between us in the bed and told us
I wasn't
your
gonna go
love
that
story, Mahmood. And I think Denzel was like, wow, these Indian girls, they know. I mean, it was so fun, and we kind of forgot what we were about to do, but we kind of knew what you were doing. Like, the whole thing
The whole
was,
time, it was a performance from me because
Yeah.
I was playing all these games, but I was just seriously thinking, come on, Ed, let's just keep this mood. Tell me you're ready. And then when it was ready, I just got on the track, the dolly with you. It was just you and me. It was a close set, and these two. And it was
you put music on, which was so
the same
lovely.
music that
Yeah.
you hear, which was Papi Tex from Congo. I mean, I love that song, and I put that music on the whole time. I remember, and just prayed that I got it, and I think we really got it. Because when I see it now, I just think, wow, we really did that. It was really. I mean, you could feel it. We kept the mood. Or they did.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you so much for making this film and this space available to us. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, right, thanks. So I think kind of on a related note, mask. I feel like romance, in this case in particular, you tell this complicated story of love, but you spoke about the idea behind the film. And that's a story of migration. It's a story about like these two communities engaging. And I think what's really beautiful about the film is that you don't shy away from talking about power. Like, yes, both families object. That's really, that's like a typical like star-crossed love. But no, one family has the ability to cut off an economy to another family. Like it's such an interesting way. And I think all of you, as in your respective roles, have had such incredible careers. By the way, I just saw The Green Knight. You're absolutely stunning in it. Thank you so much. But also, I'm curious from each of your perspectives, what do you think it is about love stories in particular that filmmakers gravitate towards as a way to talk through these really challenging, difficult questions? And what do you appreciate about them? Anyone who's comfortable answering, I'd love to hear from your respective perspectives. Thank you.
I answer.
Yeah, because love stories.
Love stories. Well, love stories are so challenging. Love is so challenging and endlessly complicated and precarious and inherently dramatic. And it's hard to write a happy love story and make it interesting, right? That's why there are so many unhappy love stories in art, not just in life. But I think I'm drawn to sort of studying fault lines, right, in relationships, which is why I really admire this film, though, because I mean there is this happy ending that you get away with without making it feel, sort of, oh gosh, it's all going to work out. I mean, it does and it doesn't. And I think the question about what happened to them 30 years later is relevant, right? Because it is left rather ambiguous at the end. I mean, we know that they're going to get somewhere, maybe to the next, to the next situation, and maybe for another, couple of years, 5 years, 10 years, we don't know. But it's not a given. I mean, you don't close it, you don't sew it up in any way. But
there is an unguardedness, right, when you really are experiencing love. There is an unguarded, there is this vulnerability, this nakedness, with no pun intended. I mean, complete. And that is a very beautiful space, where I think the revelation of what really makes them who they are is revealed. And it is never, I think, the same, between two people. It's always something that you can go into, which is a unique territory, Also, a big part of this, obviously, making this film and thinking about the story was to hold a mirror to the racism within us, big time. I was seriously, I remember here, I'm a New Yorker, I was on the, on the IRT, it used to be called then the number 1 line. And, it was quite a success, this film, when it was in the theaters and all. And Indian guys would just come up to me in the subway and says, what do you think? What are you doing? You want our daughters to marry all black people? You think they're all in Denzel Washington or what? And I would just smile and, how do you confront that? How do you, but it was definitely a feeling of being threatened, which was not our intention, but the intention is to also show what we really believe, right? And we really believe this. I used to be a waitress here at Indian Oven, and I could see how I was, how the owners of the restaurant would treat, the white customer and the black customer, if there was one, and it was just flagrant, So all of this I saw and lived in, very much so, in that New York, and it was all an inspiration of how to use it, how to hold the mirror, but also have enjoyment, also have truth and fun to it. That's what I thought when I saw it again, was that there was so much politics in it, but it's encased in a kind of real enjoyment. Anyway, that was the hope.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah? Yes?
Well, I think that's all for the audience questions, unless anybody has any other reflections on this movie, on this evening, on our conversation, which has been a bit lovely and a bit, sort of all looking at so many things from so many different angles, which is what you did, right? With your camera, looking, peering in to these different moments. And I just want to thank you all for letting me ask you some questions, some, behind the scenes questions.
Thank you.
I thank you,
Thank
Jumpa,
you.
so
It's
much.
been fabulous.
I just want to say one more last thing, which is that we've lost a lot of actors who are in Mississippi Masala, and I wanted to speak of them a little before we started, and I wanted to especially dedicate the screening tonight to our dear friend Ranjit Choudhury, who played Anil Patel in the film, who we lost last year at a very young age, and also Yvette Hawkins, who played Aunt Rose, and also Joe Seneca, who also passed away, who played Willie Ben. We've lost a lot of people, and I remember them with such love and with such gratitude. And just want to say, I reached out to a lot of actors to come join us on this this evening, and Roshan Seth, who played the father, and Sharmila Tagore sent great love and great salams to the audience and to us all. But I just want to remember those who are not with us, and especially Ranjit, who just has forever made us laugh, and whom we miss terribly right now. But thank you so much, Jumpa, for being here this evening and your first public experience, and for us and this great audience and the New York Film Festival. Thank you so much.
Thank you.